Hello and welcome. Francesca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi. So we have a focused session now about Cybersecurity Begins With You, a journey to executive leadership. We have a session prepared from Jeff Rich, and I'll leave the stage to you.
Well, thank you very much, Francesca and Philippa. It's a pleasure to be here. I was real excited when I was asked to join and give this presentation for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's important, especially for those that are earlier in their career, they're rising stars, and I know that's many, if not most of you here. So we're going to talk about that. But the other reason I was real excited about doing this is it forced me to look back at the journey of my career and to see what it really meant. And of course, after I did that, I realized I may or may not be the right person to do this for you, because I kind of have I don't have a straightforward linear career, and you'll see what happens with that. As we go through this, I want to make sure that as you have questions, let us know, because a question may not make sense later on. And I want to make sure I get to it while it's still fresh in your mind. For those of you that are here live and not watching the recording yet, if you're wondering what that is behind me, today, June 28th, is National Paul Bunyan Day in the U.S. Paul Bunyan is a legendary, huge lumberjack with his ox Blue, and that's why that's the background today. I always have a different background for whatever the day is. So let's get into it. Let's talk a bit about me first. And as I said, after I took a look at my history, a lot of things kind of just fell apart. So I'm getting in and show you what that means. Because if you look at my career journey, now I'm talking about my career journey, not my jobs. I started off with a degree in science, physics, in astrophysics as a focus, and I taught in a planetarium. So now you've met someone that has. Most people have never met someone that, unless they went to a planetarium and talked to the person behind the projector. The projector is typically called a Spitz projector. That's the brand name. And I enjoyed doing that. And I transitioned from that into security and police work, which made perfect sense to me at the time. This is when a lot of people say, how did your career get derailed or off track? This made perfect sense to me because I was always dealing with people. And to me, security and law enforcement is dealing with people as well. Now, there's the issue of knowing your job, knowing what the laws are, dealing with some people that may not want to deal with you. I get that part of it. And for a couple of reasons, I ended up being convinced to take my background in science and dealing with computers. Now, this was in the 70s, so computers were large and basic at the time. And I was convinced to convert that into my new career in computer security, as it was called in the 70s. And then before long, I was offered a management position. And I'm going to do a quick story on how I got that management position. I was working at an oil company, and you'll see who it is in a second. And the director to whom I reported said, this team is growing a bit, so I think we need a manager for it. And he told me, I want you to interview all the candidates that I bring in and tell me which ones you think are best suited for it, which I thought was strange, but did it anyways. And every candidate that he put in front of me, to me, it wasn't the right fit. Either they knew nothing about security, or what they knew about security may have worked, but they clearly demonstrated they weren't going to be an effective leader. So I was upset and went to the director and I said, I'm pretty tired of this. Every candidate you put in front of me is terrible. So he said, well, if you know so much about it, why don't you do it? And I remember hearing myself say, sure, I'll do that. And then regretting it immediately, but actually it was a really good move. So that was my opportunity to get into management, and it worked for me. The field was then renamed to data security, and then it was renamed to information security. And then I got offers for positions in senior management, which I took. And then the field was renamed risk management, and then cybersecurity, and we're getting pretty close to current time where I was offered executive management positions, and now it's simply called cyber. All the same thing, from computer security up to cyber. Everyone that believes cyber is new, and no, it's all the same thing. They're all pretty good definitions, although as we get near the end, sometimes a lot of people have difficulty understanding what cyber is. As a result, when you ask someone what cyber is, almost every person will give you a different definition. And I think we had to reach that level of abstraction for this to really work. And that's where we are. Now, I talked about my careers. Now I'm going to get into the jobs I've had. And this is where people wonder, am I the right person to present this to you? I'm going to start off here on the first line and this is not to scale. From 1979 to 2005, I had those 6 jobs. Started off with EDS and then went to Arc Oil and Gas Company, and I was there for 14 years. Then went to Dell Computer. If you hadn't heard of the first 2, I'm pretty certain you've heard of Dell. And then I went to Check Free. Now, so Arco is an oil and gas company, energy company. Dell is a manufacturing company, even though now it's a technology company. Back in the 90s, it was a manufacturing company. We built computers. And then I went to Check Free, which was a financial services company. And then I went to Interland, which was a web hosting company. And then I went to CompuCredit, which was another financial services company. So that was the first job I had that repeated one of the industries I had worked at previously over the previous 36 years. So for my first 34 years, every time I changed jobs, I also changed industries. So continuing, I went from CompuCredit to Rackspace, which is a web hosting cloud company. Many of you may have heard of that. And then for Rackspace, I became the director of operations for a research center at UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. And from there, I went to Layer Tech, which is another cloud company similar to Rackspace. And from there, I went to Engine Yard, which was a PaaS, or platform as a service, another cloud-based sort of hosting company. So at this point, by 2014, I'd been involved in 4 different web or hosting or cloud companies. And then launched our first startup, got involved in launching a startup in 2015 called Barricade, which is the Barricade icon you see there. And this was based on cloud-based early warning system for attacks on websites and data servers. We were successful. We actually sold that company to Sophos and feel really good about that exit. Went from there to being a part-time instructor at the Center for Infrastructure Assurance and Security, which is also at UTSA. That's a part-time job, which I continue to have today since 2017. So if you look at this final line across the bottom, that star, that CIIS job I have, runs through all of those up to and including today. So let's talk about that bottom line and what that really means. My next job was in 2018 with LexLine, which is a risk assessment and awareness program, mainly for financial institutions, but it's going to be growing into more than that. I left LexLine. I was a co-founder there. I left LexLine and joined Innovate, which was a 9-month federal contract working for the Air Force, and I knew that was 9 months. Then launched another startup called Service in 2020, which was going to serve both the airport environment for bringing food to passengers and the restaurant environment. And for those of you that may remember 5 years ago, working in either airports or in restaurants in early 2020 was pretty much a recipe for disaster. So that was a failed startup, because even though I believe it was the right idea and I think we had all the right things in place, it was certainly at the wrong time because there were no airports or restaurants for us to serve. So that just didn't work for us. Went from there to a data management company, Elation. And from there, in the same year, to Loyal Health, and then back to LexLine. Actually, I've had 3 stints with LexLine, but I only have 2 on the timeline here. From there, I went to Cloud Security Alliance, a nonprofit, which you may have heard of. And since 2023, for over 2 years now, I've been leading the Identity Defined Security Alliance, another startup. Now, in my opinion, this slide isn't busy enough. So I want to add one more layer to this. all the different colors and circles, and you can see the legend to it down below. If one of the positions is in red, that means I designed the job description. Now, in addition to that, every single job that says started and built program with a blue circle, I also designed the job description at each of those. So for all of those in circles, in blue or in red, that job was either didn't exist or was different when it was posted by the time I ended up filling it. And then those that have green inside the circle were also C-level positions. So you can see the mix that's in there. What's consistent, though, is I really focused a lot on building what the job was. There are 3 jobs that exist that I took as written. The first one was my first job in information technology, and that kind of makes sense. The second one was that part-time teaching position, and that's also a pretty straightforward position. And the third one was that 9-month federal contract. For every other job that I've had, built the job from either the ground up or re-engineered it from what they intended. And I'm saying that because that's how I built my career. And I'm offering to you, each one of you can do the same thing. Now, you may not be an executive, you may not want to be an executive, but you can build your career based on how you build your job. So let's get into that. I mentioned IDS which is what I'm currently leading. I'm not here to advertise that at all. But what I wanted to show you as a nonprofit, over on the right, we have company members. You can see them listed. They are in the U.S. and India. I'm just going to go through the list real quickly. U.S., India, let's see, Denmark, Turkey, Mexico. I already mentioned Denmark, Egypt, and Taiwan. I may have missed one, and I apologize to anyone that I missed. Take a look at that list, and you can go to our website also in the lower left. And the reason I'm saying that is each one of those companies are very, very engaged in security and building security and identity and building the right professionals in the space. So you can try to tap one of them and say, hey, I heard about your company through a presentation about IDSA, and I'd like to talk to you about an internship or a position. Good opportunities there. Go to our website to see those. Now, I've talked about my career. What about your career? Because we're about halfway through, and it's time to focus on what you're going to do. The first piece of advice I have for you is stop looking for a job. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. And this is a good time, by the way. If you have questions, please put them in. Oh, I'm looking here. I'm in the wrong column. I look over here in comments. Let's see. Oh, the comments I'm seeing are. Let's see if I can get through some of them real quickly. Let's see. As someone starting in cybersecurity, what habits or skills should I focus on now? I'm going to have a list of that for you to someday get into a leadership role like yours. Good question. Thanks. The next, and I promise I'll get to that in just a slide or two. Impressive career. Thank you very much. So yeah, if you're going to be in the field this long, you have to be good at keeping up with the technology of the times. Actually, I agree, and that's another consistent thing. It doesn't. Some people say I have trouble holding a job when you look at all the ones I had there, but it really does focus on, am I keeping current with the technology? And one of the ways I do that, and as you can guess, looking at me and the amount of time I've been doing this, and by the way, my career didn't start there. I didn't even include the stuff I did before, but I always make it a point to work with people younger than I am for a couple reasons. They keep me fresh, they keep me prepared, but they keep me current as well because I need to keep up with everyone. And that's the case now. The individuals I work with now, I don't think any of them are more than half my age. Of course, that still doesn't mean they're 20, but it still makes sense. Am I going to be getting into AI security if I'm not there already? Yes, on that same vein, that is the current technology now. Although I think there is more too, which is non-human identities, which really stem from AI. So not going to get into AI here only because that's another hour-long session rather than seeing what we can fit into 30 minutes along with everything else. But very important. And yes, AI is certainly there. The last thing is, not last, but let's get into now what you need for your job. Now, you need a job for things like food, shelter, and Maslow's needs and everything else around that. That's important. I get it. But the reason you should stop looking for a job is that there are plenty of jobs around that can satisfy that. If that's all you're focused on, you can go find a job that's going to pay enough to do that. And don't worry about it being in your field. But more importantly, start building your career. You may not need to find that job necessarily that's going to satisfy Maslow's needs, because you should start looking for your job, not a job. You can find a job that's actually pretty easy to do. Finding your job can be more of a challenge. Now, you may have heard this quote. I have no idea to whom attribute this to. I'm just going to call the person an old timer. That when you find something you love to do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. I like to think I exemplify that. I love what I do. I work hard, but I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy my time off too, which is really, really important. So as you work on finding your job, start off by listing your priorities. This is something that I have everyone in any team that I manage directly or indirectly. This is always one of the first things I have them do. Just list the priorities you have in a job. Not the job you have, just in the job that you want to be in. So here's a couple things. Here's 6. These are 6 at random. They aren't necessarily the same 6 you would have. After you list them, compare them by pairs. Look at one and look at the one right below it and determine which one's more important. Put that one up. Go through the entire list where you draw a line, where you rank them from top to bottom. In this case, this could be a ranked list here of the same ones. Keep in mind, this is a sample list. Your mileage may vary. That list should be what's important to you. The last thing is, when you have that list, and it should be longer, it should be more than 10 items, draw a line through the very bottom item on the list. And when, as long as you can say, yeah, I still want that job with that priority gone, then that's a priority that's not as important to you. Keep drawing lines through them, going up and asking yourself that question. And when you reach a point where you hesitate, draw a line under that priority rather than through it. And you now have a list of the important priorities that you are looking for in the next job for you in your career. I knew I was going to get the certifications questions, and I am going to get to that as well. Because certifications, actually, let me answer it right now. Certifications matter when the job that you want requires a certification. Beyond that, and I'm a founding member of ISC too. I have a very early number CISSP. And that helped me get the jobs that I wanted. If it's not a requirement for the job that you want, you have to consider the time, effort, studying, money, and renewal fees and everything else it's going to cost for you to have the certifications. So go for the ones that make sense for the jobs you're looking for, not simply to see how many letters you can get after your name. And after you have that priority list, and by the way, being able to be recognized for having certifications may be on your list. Match your job search to your priorities and use your network. Now, you hear people say this all the time. There's nothing more important in finding the right job than your network. Out of all those jobs you saw listed for me, there was one that I took that wasn't gained through a network connection. Every other job, and there's a lot of them there, I've actually had 23 so far in my career, all but one have happened because of my network. And when you want to use your network, there's a lot of things you can do. Ask them to review your resume. Don't ask, if they have any openings, or do they know of any openings? When you go through your conversation, if they're the right person for you to either have mentor you or just review things, then they're going to say, hey, I know of an opening that'd be good for you. Let them know what sort of things you're looking for. Let them know what your priorities are. And there's nothing wrong with asking them to provide introductions based on your priorities. Sometimes you can say, can you introduce me to someone that I know at this company? They don't have any posted openings, but I'd like to talk to someone there, and maybe I can convince them to have one. Thank them for what they're doing for you, and then go do your homework. Whenever they say, well, if you give me this, or what more do you need from that? Do your homework and be prompt in getting it back to them. It's an investment that will pay off high dividends. And I recommend, as you move through your career, you do the same thing for people looking for what they're going to do next. Now, resumes came up. Speaking of resumes, certifications certainly should go on your resume for those that you have. And it's good to be proud of your certifications, but again, make sure they're going to focus on the job that you want to do, not simply because everyone else has it, or it's a nice sounding letter, or you think it's great to have that there. Now, your resume is the front door for your job search. After your job search starts, once you get your first interview, in that interview, your resume no longer means anything. Everything you do from that interview going forward depends on how you present yourself and how you listen to the interviewer and how you respond to the interviewer. Let your resume read like an award ceremony description, as if someone were giving you an award, because you should include all of your accomplishments and all your results. If you go to any award, Grammys, Emmys, Oscars, any award ceremony, when someone introduces them, they may say, here's a personal anecdote I have about them. Then they'll say, here's all the things they accomplished, which is why they deserve that award. That's what your resume should be. It should be your award presentation list. And by all means, don't include, I'm responsible for this, or I supported users. Anything on your resume that can't say, here are the results and here's what you accomplished, leave it off. Make your resume succinct, and it makes no difference what you're responsible for, because it may or may not have any bearing on what you did. Like, you may have been responsible for saving $10 trillion out of the federal budget. But if you didn't accomplish that, then having that responsibility is meaningless on your resume. What you do need is, here's how much I saved by my actions. So I think that's vitally important. And if you're not ready for the first job, and I know a lot of people here are looking into internships, there are a lot of opportunities to do that. Don't count yourself short on that. I mean, I just did a quick search right before this on internships, cyber internships. Now, by using the word cyber, it's going to default to many federal internships. A lot of private sector internships don't necessarily use the word cyber, so you can do a different search. There's a lot out there. Just take a look at this page, and this was this morning. So don't think there aren't internships opportunities for you. And there are some private companies that are willing to help you out. This happens to be one of our members, which is 909, Cyber 909. But if you take a look at Intern Connect, and I have the URL for this down below, this is something you can join for free. There's plenty out there. I just happened to pick one, and especially if you're still in school. And there's incentives for you to see how many connections you can get, see how many interviews you can get, and there's incentives for employers to bring you in as interns as well. Internships are a great way to first see if this is a field you truly want to get into, and assuming it is, a good first step in the door to getting a lot of that work done. Now, we're down to about 3 minutes left. I promised we would get on schedule, and I believe we are getting there. I am going to take a quick look, though, and while I do that, I'm going to leave my contact information up here. I'm going to see if there's any questions that I missed, because I was glancing at them, and I'm pretty certain I missed them. Let's see, certifications, we talked about that. Thank you for the comments. So I'm going to go back to, what habits or skills should I focus on if I someday want to be in a leadership role like yours? I'd say the very first habit is that priority list. Revisit it every year and make sure that what you're doing is matching your life priorities. And if not, change your direction and get to a job and career that is. The second is, listen to people and respond to them appropriately. Don't focus on what you want them to hear. Focus on what they want to hear from you. And the last question I see here, what skills or qualities do hiring managers look for in entry-level cybersecurity candidates? I'll leave you with just this one: critical thinking. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, if I'm doing hiring. Now, I don't represent every hiring manager, but if I'm doing hiring, it's nice if you have certifications. And it's nice if you've actually done an internship. But the very first question I'll ask you is, Talk to me about a situation where you didn't think there was an answer to it. What did you do? Whether you got to a good answer or not, what did you do to solve it? Critical thinking is a priority, especially in cyber, because you can't simply follow scripts and push buttons. You have to be able to make decisions based on what's in front of you. And you may not have seen something like it before. So you have to determine, what am I going to do to solve this? What are my next steps? So critical thinking, I'll just leave it at that. That's the most important skill for you to have and develop.
Thank you so much, Rich, for your presentation, and that were like a lot of helpful tips. We are going now into the next session, which is with Kirk Adams, Unlocking Untapped Talent, the Apex program, and the future of inclusive cybersecurity. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too. Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.